Here is the second demonstration on the applet programming. In these demonstrations, we are going to highlight about the specification of HTML documents, and then we will conclude this demonstration with two applets. One is the calculator and the banner applets. So, let us have the HTML contents is there. Now, as you know, HTML is coming into the purview of applet programming, because the applet code should be hosted by an HTML page, and in an HTML page the applet tag is there. As we see here in this particular example, here this is basically the HTML page content, and then applet tag it is there. Now, this the applet tag is coming here in its simplest form, but applet tag is there with many other parameter specification. Now, we will discuss one by one, those are the parameters which is more relevant so far the applet programming is concerned. Now, the first parameter that is there is the code itself, and then width and height. These are the must parameter, the mandatory parameter. Any in applet tag, these two parameters, I mean code and width and height are to be there. If there is an applet tag without this, this means that it is an invalid or incorrect applet tag. Now, in addition to this valid and then necessary parameters, there are few more parameters are there, and the width and height as you have already shown, and you know exactly what is the meaning of width and height. This basically whenever the applet we want to display it is a fluidic in the sense that its size can be specified by these values. All these values are expressed in pixel. So, 460 by 160 pixel like, and we can control the size of the applet by showing the changing these values there. Now, for example, here 460 and 160 being the applet size, it will give and display, and then let us have the display with this 460 and 160 it is there. Yeah. So, this basically total, if it is the total computer resolution is 1020 divided by 1020 whatever it is there, then it basically coming into that specification there. Now, let us change this again HTML page little bit by say 200 by 200. As you see, the size will change again. We have just do not change any code, only we have changed the HTML file. Save this HTML file, again the applet viewer, no need to compile it again. As we see, the applet, yes, come, yeah. So, applet has changed its size. So, this is basically the parameter width and height by which the size of an applet to be viewed can be controlled. Now, our next important tag, that is next important parameters, the specification that is possible in applet is called the code base. Now, code base basically the idea it is that the class file that needs to be executed by an applet viewer or browser should be available in somewhere here and there. So, code base is basically says where this the location of your class file. In this case, we can see our HTML file and then class file by default, if they present in the same directory, then no code base specification is required. On the other hand, if your file is in one directory, for example, here in class directory, whereas your HTML file is in some other directory, like in this case as we see in the different directory, then we have to give the relative location of your base and then finally the class declaration. So, here again you see in the code base, the value that we have specified using this file, it is in E drive, one directory is there, under this directory another subdirectory, then there is another subdirectory class. Within this class, this file is available. So, this is a complete specification about the location of the dot class file which is there, and it will be able to locate it and then execute it. In Alternatively, here basically in the same machine, if it is the same machine, but in different directories. On the other hand, if it is not in the same machine, the browser will browse from your own machine, is a local browser machine, and your this class file can be from a remote machine in any server or in a remote PC, and then we can, and this machine if is connected to the net, then we can give the complete location of the URL of that machine, then and then the class file. So, it basically browser or applet viewer will probe into that remote machine and then we will access it. So, this is the idea about the code base. Now, archive is another example. Okay, you can have this demo. As you see, we have changed the code base here. We can maintain the HTML file in a different directories and then class file in a different directory. Giving this specification, it will find its own source and then it will run it. Now, the archive is the another Now, in your code, in your applet tag or in your applet rather, if it needs many other things to be imported from a distance location, and every time it basically refer to a import item, then it needs to be connected to the machine and then fetch it and then execute it. This will claim time, communication overhead also will increase. In order to avoid it, in the applet talk there is a specification called the archive. Archive basically whatever the files or items that is required to run this applet can be punched together in one jar file, and then the same file can be fetched or can be imported only once and find it. Here for example, our source file is .class file is here, which is there, and some other files it is there which is required there, and this file is put in the jar file there. Now, you go to this there and then jar file location, you can see it there. Here is the jar file, go to the jar file and you can see jar file contains many other important necessary file, it is there. Okay, so, we can find it and then it will basically, as you have made it compressed also. So, compression is good. Now, so it will basically all components will be fetched once and then automatically from the jar it will find its own file. If it does not file, it will not do the correct execution of course. So, this is the concept of archive, it is there. Then our next is object specification. As you know, the object is an alternative tag specification in a HTML5 which basically supported by HTML5 version and upward compatible language actually, and it is basically the object is basically same as the applet. Now, here you can see in lieu of applet the object tag is used there, and if we run it, applet viewer as well as the browser all can recognize this object now, because we are using this browser applet viewer. Yeah. So, this basically you see here no object code, object tag, no applet tag, but object tag, and using the object tag we can do it. So, it is basically HTML version compatibility, and sometimes to make the version compatible irrespective of the different HTML version that a browser can support, we can use both the code together. Here is an example. So, object and applet code can be nested in the same HTML file, so that whatever the browser it can support, whether HTML version 4 or 5, whatever it is, it will basically support. And this is an example, as you see object code is there, applet code is there, which is basically applicable relevant to a browser, it will get it and then do it. So, this is the one HTML file is an alternative way which is basically compatible to any version of HTML page. As you see here, it is basically executing, it basically gives a thread to whichever is applicable. So, object is first encountered, object is started, and then it will basically hello world class code will be executed properly. So, this is the object tag is there. There are some more tags, alt text, alt specification, and the v space, h space, name and everything. Name is there, name actually you can mention the name of an applet which can be used for internal purpose of applet execution when they are in a distributed environment. That means 3-4 applets are running concurrently, but from the distance machines, and they can communicate each other, and this process of communication protocol applet names needs to be recognized, by which the applet should be specified by this applet tag, the name of each applet. Here actually within this applet tag we can mention name, let the name of this, write the code there, yeah, right, no, here, right, here, write name. So, just simply give the name specification, name this okay, equals within double quote, and you can give the name XYZ whatever it is there. So, this basically specify the name of the current applet that needs to be executed like this way, and this is basically networking, communication and everything, which basically we are not in a position to discuss. So, I just want to skip this discussion, and then few other applet specifications which basically not so much relevant in the context of applet viewer. Applet viewer usually do not consider all those things like V space, H space, align, all these things. Those are coming in the purview of HTML browsing. If you have the Internet Explorer version 4 and onwards, then you can understand about it. This basically positioning the applet and then in a proper or in a aesthetic manner, so that applet will look good. So, for a feel good impression, applet can be managed or it can be arranged, and for arranging align, V space and H space is there, as it is HTML specific and also not specific to applet viewer, it is better to skip it there. Now, let us come to at the end of this one. I just want to conclude these things with giving a details about more sophisticated and more useful programs. First, we have to have the idea about okay. Yeah, one thing I have just skipped it is a parameter passing, and this parameter passing can be done by the param specification within the applet tag. Now, here I can see this is the one applet class, the param demo dot class, and then this class is basically yes, and then you see this param class will get the parameters. Here the parameters are named as font name, font size, and then leading and account enabled, and their values also supplied side by side. Like for this first param name, font name value is courier, we can include in double quote whatever it is there. So, double quote please. Yeah. So, usually it is customary to include all the parameters in a double quote, because HTML will treat all these parameter values as a string, and then so all these things will be treated as a string, and then basically then in the HTML they should be specified here. Now, no, it is not like that. What you have done it is okay. Now, let us pass the parameter param demo Java class. Okay, we can come to the HTML file here. Yeah, that is okay. This is the HTML file. Now, let us have the class file for this one. Here is the class file. As you see, font name, font size, leading and boolean active are the 4 parameters which is basically local to this class we have declared here, and those values you see how we can extract it either using init method or in the start method, whatever it is there. Now, in the start method we have used this param, basically the temporary string one, and then you see it gets its values font name from the parameter. Now, here in this HTML this hosts the parameter dot class, which basically the compiled version of this one, and the param name font name, this parameter font name is basically courier, and here you see font name get parameter. This method get parameter is defined in applet class. This is basically get these values of this font name, which basically here, and then courier, and you see the name which is there in the font name in the HTML file, and within this double quote this should match. If there is no matching, then it will basically gives an error. To handle this error, we usually put a try catch box. Now, so this will be just a font name, this parameter is get the value, here the value for example, courier, and it will store in the parameter as a string, and from this string we have to process it either into the integer. For example, for this font size, the value should be passed as integer here, font size. For others, for example, leading value also integer, we have to pass into integer, and for this action enabled is a boolean, its value to be passed into boolean value, right. So, string to boolean conversion and store an active. So, what we can see is that the HTML which supply the different parameters which can be extracted by an applet while it in execution, and then gets its values, and then this value can be used in the print method or some other method to process it. Here we are using all those values to simply display it. So, this way we can pass the parameters from HTML to an applet execution, and this parameter passing is very much important, because we cannot give directly input from our console, keyboard or any other input to the applet. As you see, this applet got the value and then display it. Anyway, so this is the idea about the parameter passing techniques. We have idea about the applet construction by virtue of many methods that is there, overriding those methods which are defined in abstract class. Now, let us come to the demonstration of the calculator applet. So, a calculator applet typically will look like this here. Let us have the first look of a calculator that we are going to design it here, run this calculator program, so that we can have the look of this, then we can explain it. Here, yes. Now, this is very simple and nascent look of a calculator, because I just want to make it more simple so that we can understand about it. In this calculator, what we see, there are 10 buttons, numbers, digits 0 to 9. So, basically these 10 buttons are essential to input 10 numbers, I mean digits, I mean typing from the keyboard. So, if we type 2, it will go into this one and then like this one. As you see here, whenever we click a particular button, actually we can say button 2, right, it will basically the corresponding character will be selected, is basically digit or number will be selected, numeric will be selected, and then it will display in the area. This is the text area where whatever the selection is there, it will be displayed. In addition to these numerics, there are few more buttons we can see, those are plus, minus, then star and then divide, and finally, there is a button is called equal and then another clear. So, these are the few buttons. This is a very simple one applet with altogether, as you see, total 16 right buttons are there. Those are arranged in that way, and they are enabled so that if user can click using mouse, that particular event will be there in this applet in background, and they will sense it and then get it. So, it is basically event handling concept is there. Although we do not know much about or on anything about event handling concept, we will just simply give it, assuming that some events will occur there. If events will occur, they will be handled here. Now, let us have the calculator program. Here we will emphasize about only the design point of view, and then event handling point of view will be just simply mentioned here, but details event handling will be discussed in our another class. Now, here we can see, first of all we have to create the button. As you see, we have created total altogether 15 buttons, and then another button is not button, is the text field area. Now, let us see how we have created 10 buttons. First we have created 10 buttons here, as you see. here we can see the button is the one class, it is there in AWT, by which we can create the buttons here. So, a list of buttons is created, here we can see 10 buttons are there, and then in addition to these 10 buttons, other 5 buttons that we have created, they are named differently. And then in the init method, we just background color, we know how to change the background, this is the background color of this one, set background, and also we have created another area, this area is called the text field area. So, the text field is another component, and this is the size of the text field, means how much character it can hold. So, 10, and then all these buttons and text fields are arranged in this arrangement. This arrangement is basically obtained by means of grid layout pattern, it is called. All these classes like button, the text field, the grid layout is defined in AWT package. So, they will basically do it that all these buttons that you have created will be arranged in this grid form. So, this basically look like a grid, and then we once the button is created, we have to add the button using add method there in the AWT class is there. So, adding these all these button one by one into these grids, and then altogether all buttons are placed there. Now, so this design completes, all buttons are arranged, all text feed is also created, and next basically this basically look like, but here at till this time we do not mention about any event handling concept. Now, in order to have the event handling concept, what we have to do is we have to register that a listener object will be there. Now, this we do here in the start method by adding the action listener one method, it is interface is there in again AWT package it is. So, action listener we have to include is there, and this action listener you will basically once it is implemented, and then we have to include one method add action listener as a registration purpose. That means, action listener is an interface, and add action listener is basically a registration purpose that we want to listen to this concept or element or the component, the button component and the other components are there. So, for this, so this is the mandatory one thing that we have to do it. So, this basically is basically starting point of handling your event, and then all these classes that we have declared here, we have to add into this action listener here, add and all these there. So, whenever we have already add all these buttons are there, and then all these add action listener performance needs to be specified properly, and here we do this. Here the get action commands is another method which basically get exactly what is the character that you have to type while you click your mouse. So, it is basically mouse clicking, and whenever you type it, it basically parts as a string get text and then convert it into the string to character or integer whatever it is there, and then it gets the value. So, if we press it here, get text is 2 and then it parts into the value as a number, and the number will be displayed in the text field area. And these are the basically how the event can be handled. That code is mentioned here, is basically whenever a click action is there, it get a text from there and then store into a number, and then that will be displayed in the text field. That is the event handling mechanism. At the moment you may find little bit difficult about dealing with this event handling mechanism is there. Now, here for example, if this operation is plus, so far the action handling is concerned, if we click plus, then it will work in this way, and then the resultant the plus operation will takes place. Anyway, so this way the applet contains few components, they are called buttons, and one component is called the text field area. That is all about this applet content is concerned, and for each applet components there is an action to be listened, and that action listening what we actually the action that will be to be listened has been defined by means of the implementation of action listener methods are there. So, this is the applet code that is there and how it executed it is there. Now, it is, as you see, this is a very simple and then very initial stage of applet, but for this initial stage it is enough, and there are many more things. The color can be changed, then size of each button can be configured properly, so that it really looks like a good looking applet calculator it is, although it is not at the moment. So, it can be done. All those things will be discussed whenever we discuss about AWT programming followed by the event handling programming there. So, this is at the starting point for our applet programming, and so far the advanced use of an applet concept it is there. Now another is the banner applets. We have a view of the banner applets. We have already displayed it, how the banner applet works there. Now, this banner applet that we have already discussed is basically a text which will be given from the banner the program class itself, but this is a little bit extended version of this one, where the message will be passed through a parameter passing technique. Now, if we see the HTML file here, HTML file, right, and here you can see we want to pass the value to the banner applet that we have already discussed earlier. Earlier the banner applet used the static message which is there in the code itself, but here we want to pass this value from the banner from the HTML page itself, and the HTML page will take this value and then it will pass it to the applet, and then our banner applet will run with the passed value it is there. Now, here is the demo, we can see how it will work for us. So, there is nothing as such detailed change about the compared to the previous one, the same concept banner everything, only the message is there, and then if there is no successful inputting from the HTML. So, try catch block is put, that is the only extra part that we have added here, otherwise everything remains same. And as you see, it will basically this banner will run with the message, Java makes the web move like this one, and then it is executed. So, it is another form of applet, right. So, programming concept it is there. So, we have learned about few more things, right, how the applet tag is important. So far hosting an applet code in HTML file is concerned, we have learned about it, and then we have discussed about the banner. It is an advanced version, little bit in the sense that parameter can be passed from HTML and the very initial or beginning loop of a calculator applet. So, that is all for today. Thank you very much.